So, hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Aim Growth Partners podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Zach Beegal, the Chief Impact Officer and founder of Copact. Zach, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. So excited to be on and excited to have a great conversation today about impact and kind of my business and the perspective that I've gotten over the past 15 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, we've spoken off air before that. So, there's a lot we're going to bring through in this conversation here. I'm going to make sure it's hopefully on my end as coherent as possible. We've got a lot to cover. But first, can we begin with a bit of an introduction to you and your kind of background, Zach?
Yeah, absolutely. So pleasure to meet everyone. Zach Beegal, born and raised in Philadelphia. Started my career, actually started as a video coordinator for men's athletics at Penn State basketball. Always had a passion for sports, data, interactions. I took that, started working with Pfizer, and then really found my kind of niche in management consulting at Deloitte, and then did a tech startup called Strive, where we transformed from an employee benefits company to full-scale employee experience before doing some startup advising, and then really just wanted to take a break and look back and understand what's my core. And what I found my core to be is, how do you drive outcomes? How do you drive meaningful impact and results? I am the antithesis of, hey, this is the way we've always done it. It's good enough. I always like to push the envelope and drive meaningful impact with each and every engagement. I did that at every stop and actually built the value engineering group at Deloitte, where we would tie our fees to the success of clients. And that's what's ultimately led me to founding Copact, which stands for Collaborative Impact. Our goal is, we are each and every business that we work with outcome partner. We turn your investments, whether you're buying products or services, into measurable results that drive your bottom line. We believe the days of just buying features, capabilities are over. With AI and all of the new capabilities out there, our focus is to get you meaningful results, whether that's growing revenue, reducing churn, or improving profitability. If you can't quantify the results, you probably shouldn't be investing in it or spending time on it. And that's kind of my whole career in a nutshell.
Amazing. Well, I love that philosophy. I'm keen to sort of unpack that. So, let's go back to Deloitte if we can and talk me through, I guess, whether it was an epiphany, whether it was the turning point, kind of led you to realize that this value based selling or this value based approach that you created at Deloitte was the way forward.
Yeah, so Deloitte dabbled in it for years before I was there, with I would say mixed results consistently. So Deloitte's model, very similar to many consulting engagements, are, hey, we're going to do an upfront diagnostic assessment, understand what you need, and then we want to win the big work, the 30, 40, $50 million project that we can then go and execute with hundreds of staff members over multiple years. And what we found was, it didn't come across as very authentic in terms of course, we're going to find something in the diagnostic, but is it really the most valuable thing? And what are the results? And so a lot of times we would find that we would do this amazing consulting diagnostic, and then the company, usually a Fortune 50 company, would then put the big project out to bid. And they'd be like, hey, who can do this the cheapest, the fastest? Like, I don't care how you get it done. This is what Deloitte said, or what McKinsey or BCG said, and this is what we need to go and execute. And what we found was, we weren't really being great partners there. So what we started to do was really focus everything around what we call value engineering. How do we align the goals, outcomes, and incentives of both Deloitte and the company to the same metrics? So we know we want to drive specific goals, whether it is increasing their revenue, their op efficiency, their digital transformation, their brand awareness. And we were able to align with them during the diagnostic process and say, hey, this is what good looks like. We're going to get an 8 to 12% operational efficiency improvement, or we're going to be able to drive sales pipeline by 30% quarter over quarter. By aligning with them up front and showing them, hey, this is what the end outcome looks like, and this is what we're confident that us plus these technology solutions can deliver for you, it was a completely different conversation. It would still go out to bid, for sure, because procurement and all of those things. But we were able to align incentives, and we were able to really hold both sides accountable. In large transformations, you get a lot of people pointing in both directions. Well, you said this would work. Well, you said this wasn't a problem. Every conversation you have in these value-based, value-engineered arrangements is, what can we do to drive this value? How do we drive this North Star and this end outcome to be successful? And anything that wasn't tied to that, you push to the side. And so really aligning the incentives and holding people accountable was just so transformational. While at Deloitte, it was very manual, very cumbersome, and took a lot of time. What we're trying to do at Copact is really make it even easier and more transparent. And the introduction of AI makes a lot of this much faster and more efficient from both a diagnostic perspective and a tracking perspective. So, really, the end outcome is how do you align incentives? How do you put your customer value first? And how do you ensure you're tracking and measuring that impact throughout the engagement? Because if you're not focused on that, most likely you're just implementing a fancy tool or service that's going to be put on the shelf in the next 3 to 6 months.
I love that approach and that philosophy. And what I'm interested in understanding, obviously, you had success with that in Deloitte and you kind of built out that capability. You've been advising startups, so I'm sure that kind of entrepreneurial side was kind of in your DNA. But what was it that prompted you to then go and set up Copact and go it on your own? When the SaaS model out there, you mentioned people just don't want to buy another product. Unfortunately or fortunately, it's still a very lucrative model. So what kind of gave you that confidence or inspired you and prompted you to start Copact kind of on your own and go on your own?
Yeah, I think the entrepreneurial journey started for me really at business school. So before it was Deloitte, going to be a Deloitte partner, love the culture, love the people, love consulting and helping and doing meaningful impact. But I didn't feel the ownership yet. And you don't really get that ownership to partner, which was several years away. So I went to Northwestern for business school and really opened up my eye of the value of that entrepreneurial experience, of what you can do, how impactful you can be when you're making the decisions of the vision of the company, the direction, and you have true ownership within the operations. And so from business school, I went and got my first taste at Strive, a employee benefits company. It was your simple employee benefits wallet, and saw the grander vision of where we could take it to full scale employee experience. Our tagline was one employee's experience is an entire company's potential. And during that whole engagement, my least favorite part of it was sales and driving that specific aspect. I could design the product, I could build the team, I could drive all of these different things. But what we were pushing was a new concept that people didn't fully understand. Employee net promoter score, employee experience was generally new. And we were pushing a SaaS model that basically allowed each employer and each employee to create their own experience. And what we found was we couldn't get clients and organizations to align on the right goals and outcomes that we needed. Started connecting with other people in my network, other entrepreneurs, and just kept hearing the same thing of like, we have a way. We know what we need to do. We know our product, our service, our solution, and we know if our clients follow this playbook, whether it's a SaaS tool, a service, no matter what it is, we're going to be able to drive success. We don't have a way to hold them accountable. We have to sell them the moon, and then we have to figure out a way to deliver it with them doing no work. And I said that never works. Like, even at the best companies in the world, the Fortune 50s, that's not how it works. You need everyone bought in and aligned. And so I just saw a massive gap and a massive opportunity to bridge that, where instead of sending thousands of emails, over promising and under delivering, and constantly churning and doing revenue at all costs, why don't we focus on the actual impact? Let's let the companies and the solutions out there that are driving the most value win the day. And so while SaaS, isn't necessarily going anywhere and products and services are not going anywhere, I think the paradigm shift of framing it up, what are we trying to do here? Like, this service or this product can do a lot of different things. What are we trying to do in this specific engagement, and reframing it around the outcome and the results is where I think it's going, where SaaS 2.0 is going, where AI is leading us of, I want to see the tangible results. How do we drive this together versus, hey, here's a tech stack, here's your service area, here's my SOW, here's the number of hours I'm going to provide you. It's very archaic compared to where we have the opportunity now to drive value. So big gap, big opportunity aligned with my passion, which just worked really well.
Amazing. And the business has been going about for about 10 months now. So talk to me about the journey that you've been on so far. Still obviously pretty young, but talk to me through the last sort of 10 months or so.
So many learnings. It was very similar to Strive was around before I joined for, I think, 6 or 7 years, but even still, it's just a whirlwind of, you're a startup, you're trying to find product market fit, you're trying to figure out your messaging. Took all of my lessons learned and launched with good. Now, didn't let perfect get in the way of good enough. And then just continued to learn. So got our first 20 partners on, started acquiring clients. Thought originally, hey, we're going to tie your fees and what you're paying these partners to outcomes. Thought that was a no-brainer. Thought we'd be able to, get traction, drive people in. and then recognize very quickly that, oh, people don't know what impact they need. They think they need this product or service. They think they have this problem, but how do they measure if it's actually solving that problem? How do we lower the complexity and ease into the overall process of what they're doing? So then we had to build a diagnostic agent on a GPT to actually walk people through that assessment so they could actually see, hey, this is what you told me is most important. Here are a couple ways we can go and attack that problem and go from there. So now we have the partners and now we have the clients that are understanding what they need to do. The next big hurdle was, how do we get them to change the way they're thinking about it? And I underestimated this full-heartedly of, hey, we've always bought products and services. These are the vendors we like to work with. We don't want to add another layer of complexity or measure results. We believe that we're making the right decision. This is the tool or service that we need, and the results will come when they come. I like to make an analogy of that's almost like flying blind
Yeah.
or traveling without maps or a direction. You're hoping that results are going to be coming there. And that's actually been the biggest struggle and the biggest learning curve that we've been able to get through is education of, hey, you're going to be buying products and services. Every organization does it. Are you going to be tracking the results? Are you going to be aligning your partners, the products and service companies, to delivering those results? Or are you going to buy them and hope results appear? And that education process and that change behavior is the monumental effort. It is reframing a mindset that's been built for people throughout their careers and really changing the status quo, which is taking time, but when it clicks, it works so well. We've been able to do a couple AI automation projects. We've been able to do a couple revenue growth projects where lead demand generation, meeting books. We've been able to do a lot of great things, talent as well, getting strong quality of hires. So just getting people and getting those reps in has been the biggest learning. So biggest advice I have for any new entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general, it's continue to pivot, continue to learn, continue to put your messaging, put yourself out there, and don't let good enough be the enemy, or don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. You really need to get it out there. The market will tell you what's working and what's not, and really focus on customer value first. That's what we do, and that's resonated really well with the groups that are working with us today, which is about 100 organizations.
Wow. Wow. So quite a lot of traction then over a 10-month period. So talk me around first of all how you acquired those first customers, and then when and how you sort of discovered we need essentially an impartial agent or this GPT to advise people on what value and what impact they need.
Yeah, absolutely. So acquiring customers, we wanted to go the bootstrap route. We did not want to raise funding. We knew this was a new novel concept and didn't want to rush to just have crazy revenue targets off the bat. So our goal has always been to bootstrap to a minimum of 1 million annual recurring revenue. So with that in mind, we had to get very creative. We do 2 podcasts a week. I join lots of podcasts, but we do a lot of eminence. We believe in creating value. So we do a lot of networking. We do a lot of referrals. We associate with a lot of our partners and help them close deals. But basically, we're trying to build a network effect or a community of people that believe in collaborative impact. And so by constantly putting our messaging out there, by me constantly networking, doing 8 to 10 meetings per day of just meeting new people, introducing to them to the concept, getting that quick, rapid feedback, and then adding value very quickly to them. We're not asking them to buy a product or service. We are no cost to our clients. We only get paid on a revenue share on the back end. So this enabled us to connect with and add quick value to many, many logos and many, many individuals very quickly. And that's how we continue to grow today organically is the eminence, the podcast, and a concerted effort networking, leveraging my network, leveraging the people who believe in what we're doing, their network, and just continuing to expand it out there. Just like in networking and learning that networking was going to be the strongest driver of growing the ecosystem and the network, we learned very quickly of like, hey, that makes total sense. Why wouldn't I want to buy a product or service and have 40% of the fees tied to my results? That's a no-brainer. Everybody says yes to that. Everybody says no problem. What are the results I need? What is most important? What should I be investing in and how should I do that? That is a different conversation where a lot of people get stuck up in the buying process of, ooh, should I do this? Should I not do this? How should I work together? Is this the right decision or not? And that's really where management consulting has come in and helped larger organizations do it. There's been a lot of LinkedIn out there of like, You don't pay McKinsey for the advice. You could get all of that from ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Claude, any of those things. You pay McKinsey to have the accountability of saying, hey, we hired McKinsey to give us this advice, and that's why we're going with that direction. We then thought, how can we provide people that confidence in the SMB market? No, I'm not going to be able to do an 8-week engagement for $250,000 to $500,000. That's not what my clients and what my audience is looking for. But what I can do is build all the best practices and frameworks in a GPT and guide people through that conversation and that diagnostic in a quick 45-minute session. So we noticed a big gap of people saying, yep, I want to invest in measurable outcomes and results, but which ones and how do I do it? And by identifying that gap and then trying to find a no-cost, very efficient way to help them talk through with us and align on what their strategic priorities are and what outcomes they need, that helped really close the gap for clients of, I believe in what you're doing. I like the idea to, how do I make this tangible? How do I make this real and palatable? How do I go to my board or the rest of my leadership team and say, hey, we're investing in this AI automation company. They're going to take out this many tasks and we're going to track this by a 5% EBITDA margin improvement over the next 90 days. How do we make that very tangible? So that's where the gap was and where we've tried to augment in a future-proofed way to get people the insights that they need and give them the confidence that this is the right path and the right path to move forward on.
It's quite refreshing to hear there that the businesses of all sizes get caught up in these buying cycles. I feel like I've been on that multiple times with prospective clients recently where, we've got complete alignment or something, even a call just before this, got complete alignment or something. You are trying to tie yourself to the outcome you're going to create, but people do change their mind. People sleep on it. And it could be external influences or all these other things, or maybe they don't actually know what the priority is. I know in the early days of setting up the business, I speak to businesses that thought that they need a website. Why do they need a website? Can build a website for you, or my team who do that sort of thing can do that. But that's not what's really going to push the needle. And as a growth partner, I want to do something that's going to grow your business, clues in the name. So how do you get around that kind of challenging?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to go back to your example first, because I think it's a great one of where the seller feels like them and the buyer have perfect alignment. From my perspective, that very rarely happens. You guys aren't aligned. You as the seller are trying to sell your product or service at the highest margin possible, incorporate the most revenue, and do the least amount of work. That's how you run your business. Revenue, profitability, customer retention. That's what you want. You want to sell that in, get in, and be able to make the most money possible. The client, depending on the product or service you're looking for, is hopefully looking for creating the maximum impact or solving the biggest pain problems. We try and muddy those waters by saying, because what I'm selling you solves this, and in this case study or this review or testimonial from another company, we're confident because we did it there, we can do it here with you. That's not actual alignment, in my opinion. It has to be extremely tailored to the pain points and the current situation that that client is looking for. So what we try and do with the GPT is not say, hey, we know all the answers. What we say is, hey, here's a guided framework that we've seen successfully drive executives and business leaders to align on their strategic priorities and give them options of ways to solve it, and ultimately run discovery calls on what's the best approach. So what we're doing in that conversation is not saying, hey, buy this product, buy this service, overhaul this website. What we're saying is, what are the results that are most important to you? What are you trying to do? And in most cases, it's grow revenue, improve profitability, reduce churn. Okay, what's the biggest bottleneck you have in any of those areas or multiple areas? Oh, based on that, it looks like you have a lead magnet issue. Well, how do you get most of your leads? How do other companies in your industry get these leads? And then we walk them down that path to them having an aligned approach of what they want to do. Whether they want to do it with Copact or Copact partners or not, our goal is to get them to a point to say, yep, these are the top 3 to 5 outcomes that my business needs to be successful in the next 6, 9, 12 months. These are a couple approaches of how we go and do that. So because we're taking it from an outcome perspective and then finding the right product or service solution, we offset a lot of that disingenuous or misalignment of incentives because we know what you want. We don't care which solution, which product, which service you go with. We want to match you with the best partner that's going to be delivering the results for you versus you trying to sell into a company and they know you're just trying to make a sale. You might be the best product for them, but your incentives are not 100% aligned with them. Whereas in our model, our incentives are 100% aligned with the client and the outcomes that they've identified and they are looking for. And that's what really the GPT is meant to do, is that guided conversation with executives to understand their needs, understand where they want to take the business, and then offer them options of how we could work together to collaborate to drive those outcomes. And that is a people call it consultative sales or that diagnostic approach. But when you're not selling a specific product or service, that's very valuable because
Mm.
I truly tell them, hey, I don't have a dog in the fight if you're going with Salesforce or HubSpot. I don't have a dog in the fight if you're going with this brand agency or that. I want to find the partner that we feel collectively is going to drive the best results for you and is willing to put 40% of their revenue tied to your success. That's when you know people are invested in what they're delivering, when they're willing to tie their revenue to your success. And that's our goal.
So talk around the decision there. I think it's really interesting, this tying revenue to the outcome. Let's unpack that a little bit more and talk us about that approach and what that actually means for a customer and how and where you came up with this.
Yeah, so this was very similar and very similar to what we did at Deloitte. So Deloitte, let's say we were doing a big manufacturing shop floor transformation. We want to automate and digitize the manufacturing shop floor. We, as Deloitte, have done this transformation across hundreds of other companies. We have the benchmarks and the data to say, hey, we're going to drive operational efficiency up 8 to 12%. Your scrap is going to go down, your labor is going to go down, and your profitability is going to go up at every single manufacturing floor because you're going to have better data, better information, and you're going to be able to drive better outcomes. Perfect. That sounds great. We're not ready to move forward. We're not ready to budget this. We're not ready to do this. So what Deloitte did was they built out this value-based billing approach where they would say, hey, we want to put our skin in the game. If you don't succeed, we don't want to make profit off of this. So let's build a system where, our base fees, our cost, what we invest in is covered. So you're going to pay 60%, 55%, it varied engagement by engagement, but you're going to pay the cost of us allocating these resources because we're investing in you. And all of the profitability of our business and the success of this engagement is directly tied to the results that we told you we could get you. And this would just change the conversation with executives where it would no longer be about, hey, should I go with this company or this company? It's how do I find the partner that drives the absolute best results? So that model just really resonated with me, did it for about 7 years, and then really tried to do it in the startup world as well at Strive and other startup advising stops, and just found people weren't doing it. People always had excuses. Well, I can't control if the client does what they're supposed to do. I can't control if they're using the product or solution correctly. Too many variables. So what we tried to do was really simplify it and say, hey, we're going to onboard you separately. We're going to work with clients, align what they need. We're going to onboard the best product and service partners that we can find and identify areas that you can support. We're going to blind match you. We're going to match you based off of what you said without meeting the client that you do best. And then we're going to align on the specific outcome and result, and you're going to tie 40% of your revenue to it. So make sure whatever you're saying you can deliver, quality of hire, EBITDA margin improvements, sales pipeline generation, meetings booked, whatever it may be, brand awareness, whatever you're saying you can drive, you make sure that you can drive that. And I'm going to find you clients and businesses that are looking for that support. And so it's a very nice alignment and matching. And then the partner has kind of already signed up for what they're going to deliver. Hey, I'm a specialist in XYZ. This is the areas that I can support you in these KPIs. So every single partner that we work with ties 40% of their revenue to the success of our clients. And Copact, our 10% revenue share is included in that. So every dollar Copact makes from a revenue perspective is tied to the outcomes. If it's not successful, we don't get paid. And so that's the way we've really aligned this to make it super simple of taking what we learned at Deloitte and what worked there to the next level, because we truly have no bias on the partner, the product, the service. We are just focused on driving measurable results and ensuring that we help your business succeed. And that's where the 40% comes in. If you choose to invest in the Copact ecosystem and buy products and services to drive outcomes, that's where the 40% comes in.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So it's kind of solving that disconnect between the sort of done for you, done with you, where some people think these SaaS tools are like a magic wand that they plug it in and everything gets done for them, not realizing actually you need to work with that SaaS product. You need to really be leveraging it to get those outcomes you've been promised. But there's too much disconnect at the moment where there's that finger pointing, as you mentioned earlier. You're solving that.
Yeah, I challenge anyone to tell me that they've plugged in a product, launched a project, and just let it go on its own and delivered meaningful results. It's
Oh,
never happened in the history of business. You need to collaborate. You need to align on your roles, your responsibilities, RACI, all of these different things, and you need to drive these outcomes. Now, it doesn't have to be super heavy lift, but if you're not executing the playbook that we all align to, there's no way we're going to be able to drive results. I could get you the best inbound leads possible. If you don't follow up with them in a reasonable time period, they're going to move off. Or if you don't pitch them correctly when you meet with them, they're not going to buy. So, like, you have to think about the entire process and the ultimate outcome. And that includes your responsibilities. There's no tool, product, or service out there that is just going to magically, magic wand, fix your problem and drive meaningful results. Doesn't exist.
it's funny and it's so refreshing you said that. I was on a call once again, the one just before this, and as part of the kind of work I was working on with this gentleman, I said, well, we can book you 10 to 15 calls will be our kind of KPI. That's the outcome that we're going to drive for you. Yeah, but what's the money? What's the revenue? And I said, well, as soon as I start tying myself to revenue goals, we can make projections and I can say I'm going to add this to the bottom line. But if it's you that's doing the sales calls, I said, if you want me to do the sales calls, that's something different than I'm an employee or I'm, in a contract or on a fractional role, whatever. There will be a different component, a different price to the one I've laid out here. But what I've laid out here, you're doing the sales calls. Therefore, I can't tie myself to a revenue goal. I could book you 10 meetings and that could generate you, 50K a month. Or I could book you 100 calls and generate you nothing. They might not buy into your product. They might not like your product, your customer support team, whatever it is. If they drop off, I can't guarantee you what your revenue is going to be off these 10 meetings a week. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that? Is that kind of taking it too far?
Oh, I love that model. And that's specifically where we take the next level and where Copact believes you need a third party to be
Yeah.
there to validate and vouch. Yeah, they're going to get you the 10 meetings booked a month. How do we hold the accountability on the other end?
Mm.
So, one of the biggest things that I've always learned from Deloitte, from Strive, from business school, I can give you the best product or service. I can deliver what you are saying you need up front. If you do not take accountability and action, if you are not forcing your team to work more efficiently, if that's the goal, or you're not forcing your sales team to follow the proper process, it doesn't matter what I do. You
Uh-huh.
have to connect the bridge to the overall business to drive the bigger metrics that you need. And that's where Copac steps in and comes and says, hey, we have this amazing partner. They're going to get you 10 meetings a week with your ICP. Now, to get that revenue goal that you're looking for, we need to know what's your average contract value, what's your meeting to sales conversion rate, and how do we track that over time and hold you accountable to that as well as the partner that they're getting you the right ICP meeting. It's that blended collaboration where the revenue dollars start to come in. One without the other doesn't matter. And
Uh,
that's where Copact comes in and says, hey, this is what we're going to hold David and his team accountable for. They're getting you 10 ICP meetings. If you get on a meeting and it's not an ICP, that doesn't count. Or if we want to refine the ICP to get better results, we can talk about that and drive the right things. But you need to hold yourself accountable of when I meet with the right ICP, I'm able to close 15 to 20 to 25% of them. And my average deal size that I'm able to drive, 12 to 18,000 annual contract value. And if we see a big dip or change in that, there's something else we need to touch here. It's not David's not doing his
uh,
job or not getting you the right meetings. Maybe you didn't give him the right ICP, or maybe your product isn't the right fit, or you don't have the right features, the customer experience, all those other things. And that's where we bridge the divide of anybody who's promising you direct revenue without knowing your sales cycle, it's not genuine. There's
yeah.
no way. They're taking a gamble. So maybe they believe in themselves so much that they'll do it. But you need to find the partner that's thinking through, well, hey, how are you going to own this after? Like, what does that look like? Can you send me a couple recordings so I can understand your sales process? And then we can build some benchmarks of what success would look like. So it's bridging that gap where that misaligned incentive never gets bridged. Oh, David thinks he's doing a great job. He's getting 15 meetings a week, but the customer is not getting any revenue. That customer is going to churn because they're going to blame it on you.
Uh,
But if we're upfront and honest with dual accountability, that's a different conversation where Copact or a partner like Copact can come in and say, these ICP meetings are great. David's doing a fantastic job. Why aren't we closing these? Is it your messaging? Do we need to go back and change your messaging? Is it your sales enablement? What's going on here that's causing the gap? And it works on both sides. Sometimes it's the partner, sometimes it's the client, sometimes it's just not a good fit. But that's how we're able to produce 95% success rate, is because we're getting all these bugs out in the beginning. We're not waiting 6 months where you booked hundreds of meetings for them and they got no revenue. And the default answer is, hey, this just doesn't work for us. No, it's you're not working it right.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure you probably see out there a lot, but there seems to be a lot of kind of BS, pardon the French, offers out there which will be tied to revenue. So I guess the question in that is, how do you go about, what's your process for vetting partners if hypothetically, you've got maybe someone competitor offering a similar kind of product or service to what I've offered, but it's tying it to revenue. We're going to guarantee you $250,000 in revenue, a year, or you don't pay, and sort of stuff like that. How do you go about vetting, partners to ensure you are working with a higher sort of quality and ensuring that you're maximizing your chances of obviously getting your fee, getting your revenue as well?
Yeah, so this is another learning that we got in the first couple months is we were onboarding partners based off of purely, their reputation, word of mouth and kind of like their G2 and their clutch reviews. And then we started to see that when we got into these discovery calls with clients, they were like, "Oh, well, I can't promise that. I don't control that." They weren't buying into truly the ethos of the ecosystem of, "Hey, we succeed together. I drive outcomes for you." And so what we started doing was really doing diagnostics with the partners and clients. No matter what you're coming into, we're able to do that diagnostic to really go deep and understand your business. What's working, what's not working, how can you leverage Copact? Because if you're entering the Copact ecosystem or network, you should believe in this. And if you don't believe in this, it's not a good fit. So we go through an in-depth vetting process with them to understand their capabilities, understand their gaps, and understand what they can deliver. Now, we do have partners that do revenue shares and things like that. But the key piece that we hold accountable is what we're doing is we're going to track those results. So if you keep promising, hey, I'm going to be able to do this and I do on a revenue share, and we go through 2 clients and you're not able to drive revenue for any of them because your process isn't right, your enablement's not right, whatever, you get booted out of the ecosystem. So we're constantly refining and optimizing the partner network based off of the results that they're able to deliver. So that's how we weed out any people that are not working in the right way. And we dive deep with them to understand, well, okay, you're promising this. Well, what is your average client's meeting to sale conversion rate? What's your ACV of your deals? Can I connect with a client that you've had success with? And once you get into those types of questions, if they're not thinking about those things, there's no way they're running a pure revenue model business, because those are so critical to their success that we can find those things. And it comes across the board in terms of, if you don't have the data and the information, or you're not willing to work on and align on that up front, we know it's not a good fit. And it comes across very disingenuous.
Absolutely. And what are you finding from, and I don't know if you're involved in this as much now that you've got kind of the GPT there, but if you are, or maybe looking back at your Deloitte days, what do you find is the greatest sort of misalignment where customers will think they need X, but actually they need Y? Do you find they're sort of clustered around certain things that people tend to get wrong more often than not?
Yeah. So the GPT is still, I'm on the call. So I'm on the call with everyone.
Right.
The GPT we guide the conversation. It
Gotcha.
does the deep research. So I get to be a part of all these conversations. I'd say the number one hot button topic is what everyone expects. It's revenue. But the number one misconception is, how do you get to revenue? Most people like to pin it on, meetings booked. Am I getting enough pipeline up front? Some people are like, I'm getting plenty of meetings and I have great reviews. I don't have the right sales leader or sales process to be successful. There are so many elements and underlying factors to revenue that people aren't considering. How is my customer experience? What's my net promoter score or CSAT on my product? What's the underlying market looking for? What's the outcome and the results? What's my customer success story? Not 5 to 10 case studies or testimonials. what's my data on my app, my book of business in terms of what value am I able to create for an average customer? And it's so interesting to me still to this day, when you think of a company and you think of the metrics they're tracking, they're almost all internal. It's your revenue, it's your profitability, it's your retention, it's your gross margin, it's your employee retention. These are all things about your company internally. There are very few companies out there that I've worked with that are truly tracking the value they're creating for their customers, not CSAT, renewal rates, or things like that. What's the metric that our customer is expecting us to drive? And how are we doing on that metric for them? There's not a function that really does that. It should fall on customer experience, customer success, but there's not a function that really does that well today. And because of that, that's where we see a lot of the opportunity for people of, hey, you might have the right messaging, you might have the right opportunity, but are you actually following through on your commitment? Are you driving the value and the outcome that your clients are expecting? And then otherwise, it doesn't matter. You can just continuously have churn. You need this high revenue, but people keep falling out because you're not delivering what you promise. But if you deliver what you promise and create that amazing experience, people will stick, people will talk to other people, and you can build a true value and impactful business compared to the burn and churn model, revenue growth at all costs model that many businesses do, and they can grow very quickly and very fast. But are they going to be around in 10 years? Probably not.
Why do you think the businesses kind of get swayed towards that model? As you said, businesses can grow and scale pretty rapidly, and that seems to be definitely the traditional approach. Why do you think businesses that set off, like intentionally, I think most businesses, 90% of businesses probably set off with a good intention of solving a customer problem. Why do you think businesses sort of deviate from that and, do almost kind of put the customer and customer success, sort of backseat?
Bird in the hand, two in the bush. Revenue, dollars, that immediate gratification, that immediate justification that what you're doing is worthwhile is super tempting. If somebody gave you the option, you seem to be in good shape, but I'm going to do a weight. Weight's a huge thing in the US. Going to do a weight thing. Somebody's going to give you an option. You're going to have to work out a ton, eat super healthy, and maybe you'll lose 10 pounds over the next year healthy. Or you can get a shot, which is going to diminish your appetite, and you're going to lose 50 pounds in 6 months and you can keep doing whatever you want. Everybody, most people are going to go for the easier path. Getting that initial revenue, getting and growing your business is the initial path. But these are not the companies that are driving the meaningful success. These are not the companies that are going to be remembered and known throughout time and make the biggest impact because you're just selling to sell. You're just growing to grow. You're not tying it to meaningful outcomes for the people that you are serving. And I think we forget a lot that you are serving your customers. And I think that's the big miss of this is tangible, this is valuable, this is something I know I need, and you need revenue. Not saying you don't, but the two in the bush and the opportunity to create meaningful impact and drive long-standing opportunities, that's different. And the whole model is not built that way. Your average CRO, VP of sales churns in 18 months. Like you're just spinning to keep finding new ways, new growth hacks, new opportunities to grow. The businesses that really figure out what their customers want and continuously are obsessed with driving value for them, those will always be the businesses that last and thrive. I mean, that's the difference, short-term versus long-term gains. And it's human behavior. You try and go to the easiest path possible.
With that in mind and the focus specifically on driving customer outcomes, where's Copact going to be in the next 3 to 5 years or further afield?
I don't know. It depends how well we solve our customer problems, I believe. Our goals are very much around the success of our customer outcomes. So we are very proud of 95% success rate thus far, very proud that we are able to drive results for our customers. Eventually, we want to get into a place of, hey, we were able to drive, multi-million dollars of sales pipeline. We were able to improve EBITDA margin by 6% on average per company we work with. And we really want to build out those specific muscle memory or paths that we go to. Now, another way that we drive that is not just customer success, is we need to expand and get more people bought into the process. So we're at 100 organizations today affiliated with Copact. Our goal over the next 12 to 18 months is to get to 250. We truly want that representative base of small to medium-sized businesses to understand the nuances, the different industries, and really help them drive the most critical areas that they're looking for, which for us, what we found so far, revenue growth, profitability, and improving churn. What are the different ways and how can we build up our toolkit to solve each of those main problems? And I think the day I'm confident that the Copact methodology and approach is truly game changing and can move forward and be super successful and not be a growth at all costs, but a true game changer, is the day where we are able to have a strong base of customers that have been able to achieve multiple outcomes that are critical to their business, not just one off project, not just one big digital transformation, but where clients are able to view us as that trusted advisor, trusted partner that can go and deliver outcomes for them. And that's what we're working towards. That could be at 1 million in revenue. That could be at 10 million, 20, 50, who knows? It could be at 100,000 in revenue. That I'm not as concerned with. What I'm concerned with is, are people willing and open to do the harder work, a little harder work up front for bigger long-term gains in this type of model compared to short-term revenue growth at all costs? And that's the real game changer, when I can find those evangelists and feel very confident that we can build a network for them that's going to drive meaningful success.
So it's about kind of creating that stickiness then and that real value within the ecosystem whereby it's, I think the model is sort of fantastic that you spoke at the start of the podcast about, constantly testing, iterating, changing your messaging, changing your approach. But the beauty of the model you've got is because you're not the one delivering the work, you've got the partners to do that through partnering with the right partners, through establishing the right kind of partner bench, you can create that multi-service aspect within that community without having to kind of reinvent yourself, reinvent the business model. You're able to do that by partnering with the right people that are delivering those sort of solutions. And it sounds like creating that real community and that sharing those success stories within the ecosystem is much more important than we want to 10x or 100x the ecosystem. We want to onboard this many partners, this many sort of new clients, much more slow, considered, and deliberate.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the way you think of B2B sales today is everybody's got a hammer, everyone's got a square peg, and everybody's trying to fit it in a round hole. I could get on a call with ZoomInfo, any of these big B2B players, and they're going to tell me without a doubt, as long as I have the budget, that's the one real qualifier, I'm a great fit for their product or service. What we're trying to do is really change that mechanism, and that we've learned is a growth thing. That is education. That is exposing people to a new way of thinking and a new approach, which takes longer. But our goal is not worried about the immediate returns, but worried about the long-term vision of the value we create. If that keeps us from, hitting certain revenue targets and certain revenue goals and keeps us more niche, I'm okay with that, because I believe that we will be able to really impact companies and customers at a truly meaningful level by doing it this way versus trying to just get every customer, every client, every partner on. And so it's harder, but it's definitely, I believe, the right way to build long-term value and long-term sustainability. And that's our goal.
And with this long-term approach, I mean, obviously you're incredibly kind of like strong-willed, strong-headed in this approach. It is much kind of a slower burn. But I'm sure there's been times and days or weeks maybe where you have been tempted to be kind of swayed by the shiny objects or different approaches. Share with us some of those kind of instances where you have been kind of tempted to deviate, or some of those challenges you've had to sort of overcome, even in the sort of the 10 months since launching Copact.
That's our 5% fail rate. That's where I got distracted by the shiny object. No, again, I'm a big believer in giving people the benefit of the doubt. We do our diligence. We do everything we can to ensure that we are getting people that believe in creating value for their customers and all of that. That 5% fail rate is really partners that haven't been able to deliver. We were very clear on the outcomes and the expectations. We were very clear on the model that they were going to need to do, and they were not able to deliver. And that is really where we kind of got the shiny object, where it was very much, hey, I knew after the initial kickoff and within the first month that this wasn't going to work. But I wanted to give people the benefit of the doubt. I wanted to get the rep or the opportunity to see the success, but I knew pretty early on that this wasn't going to deliver the results that we needed. And that hit us. That's why we're not 100%. That's why we're at 95%, is because I got distracted by the shiny object, and because the client really pushed that they needed lead generation. Example. So the client basically came to us, really great company, AI, chatbot capability focused on relieving administration burden. And basically, I'm like, your messaging isn't there. You're all over the place. Let's do a refined messaging style. And they said, no, we just want meetings booked. You get us meetings booked, we can do revenue, we can close it all. And I just knew it wasn't going to work. I just, from the beginning, I said, hey, you're going against the advice here. It's always your decision. Let me connect you with the right partner. And we failed. We failed because we allowed the client. We failed because the shiny object. We failed because we really wanted it to work. We really believe in the product and the company. And we thought maybe they could skip a few steps, and it just wasn't right. Their messaging wasn't there. They weren't having the right ICP, and we set up a partner to fail. So we've had both examples: partners not living up to a really well outlined plan, and clients that kind of are forcing their own agenda and trying to skip steps. What we need to do, and what I need to do a better job of, is managing both and being very upfront of like, hey, partner, I don't think this is the right fit. We're not going to move forward. Hey, client, I appreciate that. When you're ready, or if you're willing in the future to come back and do it in an approach that we can believe in, we will do this with you. But just jumping to lead generation, we're not going to get success, and we don't want to put our name behind it. And so it's tough. It's tough to say no to a customer, but we're learning how to do that here at Copact.
And I guess that's the problem where you want to be as consultative as possible. You want to guide them towards the right answer rather than saying you need to do this. But I guess in those sort of instances, and the 5% fail rate, I mean, it's definitely nothing to be kind of hanging your head down about. Like it's incredibly impressive. But I guess in those instances, you need to, I guess, almost challenge that kind of consultative approach of actually we can't move forward on these grounds because we're not going to deliver the results. That's a bad testimonial or a bad case study for us. We're not about that. So that then becomes very difficult. And I think also on a side note, that's what then damages the reputation of whether it's lead gen agencies, of recruiters. I've been in recruitment in the past of, oh, the recruiters were crap. No, you've been hiring this very specific skill set which doesn't exist in the region. They might have provided salary benchmarks. Maybe the salary's wrong. Maybe the talent you're looking for is on the West Coast, not the East Coast, or vice versa. And if you want someone from the East Coast to, come over to the West Coast, you're going to have to pay West Coast salaries. Or if you're trying to hire someone on the West Coast for an East Coast salary, it's not going to work. And all of a sudden, it's so easy to be like, lead gen doesn't work, recruitment doesn't work, agencies are crap. Actually, no, your approach and taking that advice on board, because I think I've been a recruiter myself and there are some bad agencies out there, but most people will provide you with that insight. And when you're hiring a recruitment agency, it's not just that candidate flinging and job matching or skills matching. It's that industry insight, educating the prospect on that. But, people are so quick to bash recruiters, for example, of they didn't get the results, they didn't do this, they didn't do that.
It's always easier to point the finger. And one quick thing, I know we're running out of time here, but that insight that you just brought up of the consulting approach not allowing you to walk away, that's why we rebranded to being an outcome partner, because an outcome partner can walk away respectfully. Yeah. And of course say, hey, we love what you're doing. We get your urgency around growing revenue and jumping right to leads. If you'd like to work with that partner and go do that, please go do that. We can't facilitate and guarantee that outcome or results because we don't believe you're ready for that yet. If we could be wrong and you could be right and have wonderful success, but we have to hold ourselves to a higher accountability of we are ultimately evaluated by the outcomes we deliver, and we do not feel confident that we can do that. So that's where it is a consulting and a consultative sales and approach, but where we hold ourselves to a different tier is being that outcome partner, where if we don't get the results, it's a waste of our time, our brand, our reputation, and we're just not going to do it. It just doesn't make sense for us, and it doesn't make sense where business is headed overall.
And as a final thought for businesses, either starting out a year in, a couple of years in, what do you think is the most important skill for a founder or kind of the early stage employees to develop for the real kind of success for the business?
Networking and building a cast of believers, support, building your board, building your family and friends around you. It is a very difficult thing to do, to build something from nothing. You need to take all of the help, all the support, all the good faith and a good effort from everyone around you. And don't be too proud. I go to my board and say, hey, this messaging isn't working. We've switched messaging 6 or 7 times. Hey, this my sales pitch isn't working. Is it me? Can you watch a recording and tell me, am I coming on too strong? Am I not being authoritative enough? What's going on here? So really just use everything in your arsenal,
Uh,
because even if you do, it still might not work.
yeah.
98% of startups fail. You really need everyone in your bandwagon,
Uh,
and do your best to listen. I know you believe in the idea and you're passionate about it, but there are always ways to improve, and every insight you get, whether you take it and incorporate it or not, is valuable. So take the at bats, take the help, take the support, and really try and build something special.
I think that's such a fantastic place to probably leave the podcast, leave everyone with that kind of nugget of insight or wisdom. So, Zach, look, it's been such an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast, learning about kind of your story, going back to kind of the Deloitte days and even before them, but really learning that why and what you're building at Copact, what the future looks like, and what success really looks like for you now and in the future, with that real kind of focus on outcomes for customers. So thank you so much for your contributions, Zach. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, David, I love it. I appreciate it. Look forward to working together continuously and continuing to collaborate. But thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.